Hello, everyone. Welcome to the 19th episode of Conversations with T. This is your host, T, and today's guest is someone who I've also met in uni. She's a medical student, and she and I have several things in common, such as having sisters but no brothers, being introverts, and having a thing for Yemeni men. How have you been, Dania?
I've been good, thank you. How have you been?
I'm all right, alhamdulillah. Um,
Alhamdulillah.
Thanks so much for joining me today. I'm really excited about our episode because the topic which we're going to focus on is very important and interesting, and we're going to talk about beauty. Now, beauty is a very broad subject, and I don't think one episode could cover everything that has to be said about it. So we're just going to focus on a few subtopics which are related to that, but they're mostly going to be based on our personal opinions and experiences. So, do you want to begin by sharing your thoughts about having preferences, typically when it comes to selecting a potential spouse?
Hmm. Okay, so Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. First of all, thank you so much for having me. Um, I think the topic of beauty and beauty standards is so important just to talk about because I feel, well, definitely in my life, it's really impacted me and has really affected how I felt, especially when I was younger,
Mhm.
and how I went through different experiences and how those experiences shaped me. So it's definitely an important issue that a lot of people think about and like experience on a daily basis.
Mhm.
So I think I'm going to start off with just explaining my background, and I think that will give a better perspective of where I come, like where my thoughts are coming from.
Okay.
So I grew up in, so my both my parents are Sudanese,
Mhm.
so ethnically I'm Sudanese. I would identify as Black African Arab. And I think the Sudanese culture encompasses both aspects of the African culture and the Arab culture.
Mhm.
That being said, I grew up in Ireland. So I grew up in Ireland until the end of primary school, and then we moved to the UK.
Okay.
And so I very much grew up around the Western perspective of beauty and beauty standards.
Mhm.
Um, but I did have a lot of friends, especially when coming to the UK. I had a lot of friends from Arab countries, from African countries, from Asian countries. So I definitely have been exposed to a wide range of beauty standards.
Mhm.
Um, and I think so when I was growing up, so beauty standards was especially in Ireland because I grew up in a very rural part. I think we were probably one of very few black families,
Mhm.
um, and so the beauty standard was very much white, blonde hair, blue eyes, green eyes, maybe.
Mhm.
Um, and that was just the standard growing up. And obviously, I didn't fit that standard. But I didn't really think much of it because I was so far away from that standard that like even if I tried, I wouldn't have been able to like reach that standard. And I
Mhm.
think people just accepted that I was different.
Mhm.
Uh, and it wasn't really until I grew up slightly, um, and we moved to the UK, and then there started to be a few more ethnic groups that I was associating with. And then like I suddenly started to see beauty standards. So when we moved to the UK, I think it was the first time my family meeting other Sudanese families in the community.
Mhm.
Um, and I started realizing that there was a beauty standard for like Sudanese people, for Black people, and for Arabs.
Mhm.
Um, and that standard affected both women and men, or boys and girls, because we were young. And that standard was very much the opposite of the standard that I was used to, which was so the standard I was used to was fair skin, blue eyes.
Mhm.
Um, and the standard in Sudanese culture was light skin,
Mhm.
um, quote unquote good hair, which they thought of as like loose curls, if not wavy curls,
Oh, okay.
um, which is it is interesting because I most Sudanese people don't have that, which is
Oh.
why I found it really interesting because it was basically every contradiction, um, everything that wasn't Sudanese was thought of as beautiful. So Sudanese people tend to be quite like we have a wide range of people, but a
Mm-hmm.
lot of us are African, so we do tend to have darker skin,
Mm-hmm.
curlier hair because we're African.
Mm-hmm.
And so the beauty standard was opposite of that. It was lighter skin, it was looser curls.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and that was applied to both male and female.
Mm-hmm.
And I always thought it was interesting because it affected how I thought of myself. Because before then, I never really like had anyone to compare my skin tone to.
Mm-hmm.
And then I started noticing that people were like, "Oh, you're quite dark,"
Mm-hmm.
or your hair is very like they used to say khushin, which I didn't realize what that meant until I was a bit older, but it's more like dry and like frizzy hair. And it tends to be used for hair that's less that's more curly. Um, and that's when I realized that there was a really like stark beauty standard, and I think that's when um the clogs in my head started turning, and then people started saying, "Oh, like you must fit this beauty standard." And when you're looking for like a spouse, as you say,
Mm-hmm.
um, they must look like this, or else your children will not look like this, and so on and so forth. So I thought that was quite interesting.
Thank you for sharing that with me. I would say, if I were to reflect on the beauty standards from my culture, which is the Bangladeshi culture, so um, so in my culture, a woman in particular who is fair-skinned has long, thick, black, straight hair, who's skinny, who's tall, and has sharp facial features is considered to be beautiful. Um, I myself, I don't meet some of these standards. For example, I'm very short, I have a baby face, and I don't have
Mm.
pale skin, but that does not mean that something's wrong with me or I'm ugly. And I shouldn't be made to feel bad for not possessing all these features because they don't define my worth. And no one, in fact, should base their self-worth on their physical appearance because looks eventually fade, and our personality is what matters more, and it lasts for a lifetime. In some cases, that is because some people can change for the better or worse. I think a question which all of us should really ask is whether any sane person would want to spend the rest of their life with someone who's selfish, narcissistic, abusive, or disrespectful. The answer would obviously be no, because that individual is toxic, and a healthy relationship needs two people who not only complement each other, but they should have many positive characteristics, and who are always willing to improve themselves. And yeah.
No, I completely agree. I mean, beauty is only skin deep. I'm like, sure, someone might be like really attractive and you might be attracted to them straight away. But like, hopefully, a marriage should be built more on that, more should be built based on more than just that, because you're going to be spending hopefully a long time with this person.
Yeah.
And really, it sounds really cliche, but really values and personality really do matter. Um, a lot of attractive people I know
Mhm.
um, are very shallow, and I think beauty could also be a curse in that sense that especially like during teenage years.
Mhm.
Lots of beautiful people like I grew up with. That was their one personality trait. They didn't have to like impress anyone with anything else. They didn't have to read about anything. They didn't have to be eloquent or anything like that, because people just perceived them as great because they were good looking. Whereas other people, because they didn't have that spotlight shone on them,
Mm.
um, they were able to develop other characteristics. So like having interesting conversations with people, reading a lot, building a personality away from just physical looks.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, in terms of a spouse, I think it's if it's just built on beauty, beauty fades.
Exactly.
Um, and I self-worth should really be based on something that's not so superficial.
Mm.
Um, and beauty standards, like what is the beauty standard? Like it changes from culture to culture. Like as I
Exactly.
know in Ireland, um, being like for example, tanning, especially in a lot of Western countries, tanning is seen as like or being bronze is seen as like I don't know the gold standard.
Oh, really?
Whereas
Yeah, yeah,
like people tan, they want to seem darker. Whereas in Sudan, like it's the complete opposite. People use bleaching creams to want to seem lighter. So
yeah. Mm,
changing yourself to fit whatever culture or whatever beauty standards in trend that time is really not like a good way to live. Like it affects your self confidence, and it's not something that's like you can rely upon. Like
mm,
you need something else to like ground yourself or like
exactly.
um
Yeah.
um to build your self worth upon.
Yeah, and this isn't to say that beauty is unimportant. It is, but and there's nothing wrong with wanting to look beautiful. But I think in today's time, women especially are, being unnecessarily pressurized to look a certain way, and their unique features aren't, celebrated. And I I feel as though too much emphasis is given on how we should look instead of how we should be as people, and we're not, fully aware or educated about how important our role is in society. What do you think? Do you agree, disagree, or do you want to add something along with this?
Yeah, completely agree. It's important not to hold yourself up to like other people's standards
Hmm.
because if you do that, you'll never be good enough for like anyone because someone will see you as one person will see you as beautiful, the other person will see you as ugly.
Mm,
So chasing other people's acceptance is just a losing battle in that sense. And so it is important because a lot of like my not all of my self-confidence, but a lot of my self-confidence does come from like feeling good about myself. Um, like so sometimes I do want to wear makeup and I think that's completely fine. Um, but also I also pride myself on being an athlete. Well, maybe not as active now because of medical school, but being an athlete, having other hobbies that I enjoy,
hmm.
and just not just focusing my entire self on what I look like, but
Yeah.
like having hobbies that I enjoy, just finding happiness in different things,
Mm,
um, and just embracing who I am, what I enjoy, what I like, and like not basing all my success on things that are I don't see as that important. So yes, beauty is important. What you look like is important. Everyone has unique features that makes them beautiful.
exactly.
Um,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And
but it's important. Like that's not the only thing that you hold yourself up to.
exactly. And I also think having like telling people that you must have like these traits or otherwise you're ugly I or not good enough it's just very toxic. And the thing is, every individual is different in terms of their personality types, interests, dislikes, etc., and their preferences would also be different, right? um
Mm.
like this shouldn't be something that you myself or anyone else should get criticized for, because we're all different. We all vary in terms of what we find attractive. For example, I'm usually attracted to very tall men who are at least 6 feet, with curly dark hair, a lean or muscular physique, and a tanned skin tone. Now, with that said, I'm not saying that men who don't have these features are unattractive. I, as a matter of fact, found myself to be attracted to other men who didn't possess these traits, and um, I mean, during certain moments of my life. And you may share the same preference as I do, or you may find other features to be more attractive, and that's okay. You don't need to have the same values concerning this aspect. What do you think?
No, I agree. I think yeah, everyone does have preferences. I
Mhm.
think the problem becomes when the preferences are like you become very black and white with them.
Mm,
So only a tall man, or only this, or only that. I think Some people do become very obsessed with just the outward image, and they just forget about everything else. They forget about what this person is like as a human. Can they hold a conversation?
Mm,
And they might cast away some like really great potentials because they don't fit their like checklist of
mm.
like outwardly features that they're looking for.
That's
And I've
just
seen this happen so many times. Go on.
no, I was just going to add that that's just very rigid, you know,
Mm.
and
Yeah.
unfair because everyone looks different, except for like identical twins or whatever, but you get my
Yes.
point, right?
Mm.
And what do you so I have a question about that. Do you think the same principle, like what we just mentioned until now, do you think the same principle applies to ethnicity slash race? Because I personally think that when someone says that he or she finds people from such and such ethnic background or country to be very good looking or whatever, they're not implying that people from other ethnicities or countries are less attractive. I think it has more to do with being attracted to certain features. Which people from a certain ethnic group may commonly have. I'll give you an example. Let's say there's a guy who's attracted to blondes more than dark-haired women, and since blonde hair is more common among Caucasian women than it is for um in women from other ethnic groups, this man may generally be more attracted to white women than non-white women. Does that make sense? What do you think?
It does make sense. Yeah, I think, I mean, I have this as well where I really like curly hair.
Mm-hmm.
Um, though curly hair is a trait that honestly I can find in almost every ethnicity. So I don't tend to close myself off to a certain ethnicity. But yeah, I completely agree that just because you have a preference for something, and you tend to find it more commonly in certain ethnicities, it doesn't mean that should be a problem or that you're hating other ethnicities. I think the problem does become when you're like,
Yeah.
I will only date or like look for specific ethnicities, so Asian
Yeah.
guys, Black guys, um,
Mm,
you won't consider anyone else, regardless of any other like good features they have.
yeah.
Um, and I mean, I guess to each to their own. Like, if you really don't want to date someone from a certain ethnicity, then that's completely your right. You can't force anyone to do so. But then you have to question the why, the intentions of why you don't want to. You won't consider a black man or you won't consider a white guy, and see whether those intentions are problematic, like whether it comes from like deep-seated racism or something
Mm,
um, along those lines. I
mm,
know in Sudan, in my experience, a lot of Sudanese women,
mm-hmm,
this is a cultural thing, but they won't marry people who are darker than them
mm-hmm,
or people from certain like countries, so like West African countries or even certain tribes in Sudan that are tend to be more African and less Arab mixed because Sudanese people are a mixture of different ethnicities. Some people are very like just African tribes, some people just Arab tribes, and then there's people in the middle. But so a lot of people who are like the Afro-Arab tribes won't marry or won't allow their daughters to marry someone from an African tribe, um, because they're darker, they have certain features, they're seen as unattractive,
mm,
general populace, because the beauty standard in Sudan is to be as Arab as possible. So lighter skinned, as I said, wavier hair. And so I find that a really problematic thing.
mm.
That's where I draw the line in terms of having a preference because that's just an issue of racism at that point.
Yeah, yeah, we have to be really careful with regards to this issue because it is pretty sensitive after all. Some people may intend well, whereas others, their reasons may like the reasons could be just very racist, unfortunately. Do you think um Do you think certain people, I mean, do you think people from certain ethnic groups would find it more difficult to get married, to to look for a spouse or get married because of their skin color or how they look? What do you think?
No, 100%. Like, I don't think that's like a question. Like, I know a few, I mean, being in London now, there's a lot of reverts, alhamdulillah. Um, and I was talking to a friend who's a revert.
Mm-hmm.
Her family are Jamaican, so she's Caribbean.
Mm-hmm.
And she was telling me how she knows a lot of people, reverts, who are white
Mm-hmm.
and who will like straight away like find like a Muslim spouse because they're seen as like desirable, like wow, like a white woman, like etc. etc. But like with her, she's found it like really difficult because obviously there's not a lot of Caribbean Muslims. I mean, there might be like quite like a larger proportion of Caribbean Muslims in London because it's a very diverse population, but like in general.
Mm-hmm.
And so she was talking to a potential, and he was from a South Asian
Mm-hmm.
um, family, and the biggest obstacle was that his mum was very against her because she was black, like that, just because she was black.
That's really
Um,
unfortunate. And
exactly. Like, I just don't think this sort of tone should be accepted within our communities. I understand why it happens. Um, I understand like a lot of families want people from their same like ethnic community because I don't know, the same language, like it's more comfortable for them. But like when the issue is literally just down to race, like this person is black, like I won't allow you to have like a black wife, then I think that really needs to be checked and
exactly, I agree.
it needs to be brought up and talked about.
Exactly. So thank you, Dania, for joining me today. I had a very wonderful discussion with you, and yeah, I hope the rest of your evening goes well. Thank you, and take care.
Thank you so much for having me.